As an example to a rational decision-making process, we could look at the Affordable Care Act. Now, the Affordable Care Act mandates that for most legal residents, they are going to be required to obtain health insurance. Well, let's think about that now in terms of its practicality. That is, where could you expect some pushback in terms of getting that bill passed? Or let's look at it from the positive perspective and is why is that aspect of mandating legal residents to have insurance so important? So think about some of those ideas in terms of if we don't have mandates for legal residents to obtain health insurance, what are the potential consequences for the success of the Affordable Care Act? One of the things that the Affordable Care Act did do was create these insurance exchanges through which certain individuals or families can receive federal subsidies to substantially reduce the cost of purchasing insurance. Again, as we will see as we move forward, that these are issues that are still going to face other challenges. We saw that the mandates faced challenges in 2012 from the Supreme Court in trying to get the bill passed, which ultimately upheld the decision to allow mandates. But now we're looking at things in terms of subsidies, and we're seeing more challenges in those regards. The ACA also provided for expanding Medicaid to up to 138% of poverty. But the Supreme Court decided, well, you cannot mandate all states to do that. So this essentially led to states either opting in or opting out of the Medicaid expansion. Well, think about that component of it. If we provide insurance and insurance subsidies for those people who do not qualify for Medicaid at the federal level through the expansion, then what happens in those states to the individuals who don't have the expanded Medicaid? What are the requirements for them? Are they going to be required to be mandated to have insurance? And if so, how do they pay for it? Because there's nothing in the legislation right now that stipulates that you are going to receive any federal assistance for purchasing insurance, and yet the federal law requires individuals to have insurance. It also establishes penalties on certain employers who do not provide minimum health benefits to their employees. That seems to make sense, and most large employers offer insurance to their employees. The big challenge in this particular law was when small employers were required to have health insurance for their employees, employers who didn't necessarily provide them at that point, and looking at forcing those employers now to provide or at least make offer to employees to have the insurance. And these employers could purchase the insurance through exchanges or allow an opportunity for their employees to purchase exchanges through the insurance exchanges and provide some form of subsidies. When we looked at this particular this particular portion of the legislation, it also dealt primarily with full-time employees. So think about that in terms of what some of the responses were from some of the employers. Why did Congress refer to this as a job-killing law? Think of some of the challenges that might have been faced because of the effects of this law on job creation. Are they in fact valid objections to the law? Other changes to the law that were very popular, covering young adults on their parents' insurance up to age 26, or eliminating the donut hole, ultimately eliminating the donut hole for seniors. I alluded to this issue of the donut hole in a previous lecture, but that is that that Medicare covers prescription drugs up to a certain amount, and then individuals must pay for that insurance after they've met that amount until they get to another threshold. So there's this gap, and if you're older, that you may typically have more prescription drugs required, and so that can have a significant effect on you. Let's say the first threshold is $2,000, and Medicare will cover your prescription drugs up to $2,000. But then between the $2,000 and $5,000, individuals must purchase their own prescription drugs. Well, that means individuals are going to be out of pocket for as much as $3,000 before they've met that donut hole requirement and the full mandate comes in. What are the consequences of that for seniors? Why is it important for us in terms of looking at the need to remove the donut hole? Thinking about the coverage for young adults, why is that so popular? What are some of the ramifications if the Republican side of the Congress was able to repeal the Affordable Care Act, as they keep threatening to do? What are the consequences of that law? If you repeal the Affordable Care Act, do you keep this mandate that you cover that coverage of young adults on parents' insurance up to age 26? It's very popular. What are the consequences if we ultimately throw out the law? These are issues that are very important for us to consider. And in terms of that, the importance of those considerations, we have to look at who influences policy and think of some of the influencers of policy. We have interest groups who influence policy, and they do that either through lobbying or electioneering, that is, providing political support to candidates. They do it through litigation. They throw up roadblocks. We're going to see that with the subsidies. They may help shape public opinion, as we saw under President Clinton when they tried to sway public opinion to oppose President Clinton's attempts to reform the healthcare law, by saying that government was going to have too much interference in your healthcare decisions. The other influencers of policy, though, the other major influencer of policy is the chief executive. And the chief executive has at his or her, in this case, typically his, power all of those different administrative branches to help conjure up support for a bill, or at least to provide information regarding the outcomes of certain measures that are being influenced. Not to mention that the chief executive also has the bully pulpit in order to champion their causes. So these influencers of policy are very important. Two other terms that I want you to be familiar with are going to be the pluralist perspective of interest groups. Pluralist perspective meaning that there are many interest groups out there that can represent everybody's interests, or the elitist perspective of interest groups, that political power is concentrated in the hands of the few. Which one is the case truly in the United States? Think about those, and we'll have those for further discussion. Thanks for listening.